the gap, standing for Jesus, standing in the gap for family and friends, standing in the gap, one love for all, so we all can make it in. Standing in the gap, standing for Jesus, standing in the gap for family and friends, standing in the gap, one love for all, so we all can make it in.
Welcome, this is Art Harmon. Welcome to our Standing in the Gap, our podcast here. You know, I talk every week in our Christian education ministry, our weekly program, about standing in the gap. And that's what we named our ministry. And the reason is because of the gap that has been created between God and his people, God and God's word and people, how they live and behave. That gap is getting wider and wider and wider. And it's just amazing when I sit up and I listen to what's going on in the world and the things that you hear. It's just so amazingly bad. And you know, right now we're going through this war over in Ukraine. Unnecessary war, did not have to be. People getting killed, children getting killed, people's lives being disrupted, leaving their land that they grew up in, their country, and becoming refugees at the spur of the moment. I mean, what's their life going to be now? All the buildings that are being devastated over there, it's just amazing. And on top of it all, it just did not have to be. But you can't be sitting there and not seeing the evil, the wickedness that is going on over there in that situation. It's been building up and all that. I understand that. But you don't have to even look over Ukraine. You look right here in America and you see the lies that are just rampant and the things that people are doing and saying, and they don't care about the effect of it. They don't care if they're cheating people out of their right to vote. They don't care about whether or not democracy is being torn down and destroyed. So just so long as they have some power to I guess control things, and to do whatever one man tells them to do, and they just sacrifice all their honor and all their reputation to follow one man that they know is wrong. They know it's wrong, but they do it anyway. And you look at the January 6th and what happened there in the commission and all that's coming out. The Republicans who may stand up and say, you know, all this is wrong, Trump was wrong, and there was no stealing of the election and all that. And what happens to them? They get ostracized. They get excommunicated,
canceled.
Definitely canceled, and it's just so wrong. It's so wrong. We were watching the State of the Union speech by the president, and two of the female Republican first term senators, representatives, were heckling him. Were in the middle of his speech. And he said, well, they have a right to express their opinion, but there's a certain way you express it, a certain way you don't. What that shows is the guardrails have been destroyed. That people now are doing whatever they want to do. And all that is chaos. But like I said before, you can't sit there and not see the evilness, the wickedness that is going on there. And it seems to be growing, and it seems to be taking root to an extent where maybe it cannot be turned back. They got elections coming up, and people are just doing whatever they want to get elected. They want to gerrymander us out of our vote. They want to justify police killing black people and all that, and people act like that's new. They act like that is something that is just starting. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not just starting. And I'm here to tell you that it's evil. It is evil. And the thing about it, some people, it amazes me the people that don't believe in evil. They don't believe in wickedness and act like it's not there and all that. And try to act like, well, not try to, they don't believe in the spirit world. Because remember what the Bible says is that we don't fight against flesh and blood. We fight against spiritual wickedness in high places. That's where it comes from
That's where we have a whole lot of wickedness right now.
right now, and it leads into our next study in our ministry, which is we're beginning a new study this Saturday, and it's called the Spirit World, Angels and Demons, and you can't understand the spirit world, the angels and demons, because well, it's an unseen, it's unheard, it's unfelt. It's a mix of good and wickedness, and we act like it doesn't exist. And the only thing exists is this world. And the study we just got finished, we were able to prove one, God is real, in the case for Christ, and we were able to prove that from the beginning, even scientists will tell you there was a big bang at the beginning that created space and time and substance and all that. And that if there was a beginning, there had to be a cause for the beginning. And if there was a cause for the beginning of this entire universe, whatever caused it had to be all powerful, all knowing, all seeing, all understanding, and thank goodness, all loving. And so there is a spirit world, and that spirit world is all around us, and it's filled with good and it's filled with evil. People don't want to believe that. You have to believe it because the Bible talks about spirits and angels and demons a lot. It talks about that. It also tells you one thing that should make you always believe it and understand it, and that is that God is a spirit. And you must worship him in spirit and in truth. And if you understand God is a spirit, then you have to understand that the devil is a spirit also. And the devil is working all the time against God's word. See,
And against God's people.
against God's people. And what people don't understand is that evil, it involves us, it envelops us. It yearns for us. It calls out to us. And people say, well, no, I'm not the best in the world, but I ain't the worst and all that. But understand that a little bit of evil saturates the whole batch. And it doesn't stop until it engulfs you. Let's take the United States. We look to the United States as the home of the free, and what is it? The land of the
free and the home of the brave.
And it's ingrained in our history. We were taught that in school, that it is and is. And they freely teach us that, but they don't want to teach us about critical race theory, you know. But they'll teach us that. Well, let's look at that.
Hold on. I don't even want to go to critical race theory. I just want to say, let's tell the truth about our history.
Well, in any event, it all comes down to that. The critical race theory is a result of the history. And if you read the 1619 theory, you'll find that out. Things that we kind of take for granted. But look at the land of the free, the home and the brave. home of the brave, and America is that shining light on top of the hill and all that kind of thing. Let me tell you something about the United States of America and from its beginning, because they always like to look back to what the founders of the United States were thinking and all that. You know, when it comes down to some issue where people are divided on it, they say, well, let's look and see what the founders thought about that. The problem with that is the founders lived, what, over 200 years ago? More than that. And a lot of things we deal with today, they had no idea even existed. And so we're going to look back and see what they think about a lot of things. Some of it, sometimes I look back and I say, I don't care what the founders thought. Why? Because they were a bunch of hypocrites. They were a bunch of thieves. They were a bunch of slaveholders. What does all that mean? That means they were wicked. They were evil. Evil was in them. And say, what about the good things they did and all that kind of thing? Well, I'm sure you can sift through and find some good things that they did and all that. But you can't rely on their word as being the gospel when from the beginning it was thwarted. It was not true and all that. And people say, well, why are you going down that road and saying those things? Because people are trying all over this country to make you believe stuff that's not true. They want to ban books. They want to keep certain things out of the mainstream so that our children won't feel, we don't want them to feel bad about what we did or what our ancestors did. One thing about worshiping God in spirit, it says you have to worship Him in spirit and in truth.
Truth.
And in truth.
Yes.
And so when we start to get away from that, that's where that gap starts getting wider, and it starts getting wider. So you look at America. Okay, let's look at America, land of the free, home of the brave, and from the beginning, they incorporated slavery into their founding documents. The founders did that. Those that they want us to look back and see what they thought. I kind of know what they thought. They wanted to keep us as slaves. They wanted to keep us as less than a full person, you know, and they wanted to keep it going. And you say, well, a lot of them wanted to end slavery. Well, you know what? There were abolitionists who wanted to end slavery, but they also wanted to make sure that this was the land for only the white Europeans. You know, I say, well, why are you saying that? Because it's truth. Because
oh
it's truth.
yes.
And look at what happened. I mean, it got into the Constitution. It became systemized. People don't want to talk about systemic racism. No, it's true. Look at the Constitution. Look at how they've enforced it. Even the Supreme Court. We look at the Supreme Court as being the one we try to get to try to get some justice and all that. Well, look at the Dred Scott decision, where back in 1850, the Supreme Court said that, yeah, we're saying that black people are property. They're property, and even if a man like Dred Scott goes into the free states in the north, he's not free, because we're going to allow all the Southerners coming and take him back. Ended up in a civil war, which, to be truthful, if Lincoln could have avoided that, he would have avoided freeing slaves. He even wanted to have a place in South America or over in Africa, whatever, where once he freed the slaves, they could go. Why? Because he didn't think they would be able to live equally with the whites here in America. And one thing he said was absolutely true. People want to get on him, but he was living in the times that he was living in, and he indicated that it would take over 100 years for blacks to become equal with whites. Well, he was partly right and partly wrong. It hasn't been achieved yet.
It's been more than 100 years.
And more than 100 years. So, when it comes down to it, we have been kept under the thumb even after after the Civil War, and you're now free and all that. How do you free somebody who doesn't have anything and tell them, okay, now you on your own, make it on your own. We're not gonna help you and all that kind of thing. It absolutely makes no sense. I know some people won't like what I'm saying, but it's got to be said.
But it's not only we won't help you, it's we're going to allow people to keep putting their foot on your neck. We're going to keep allowing that to happen. In the 1860s, in the 1870s, in the 1910s, Lord have mercy, in the 2021s, we're going to allow people to put their knee on your neck, and it's okay.
Not only is it okay, we're going to pass laws that allow them to do it. We're going to have the Supreme Court say it's okay. And then, all right, now y'all make it on your own. Somehow. How in the heck would somebody ever make it in a situation like that? The Ferguson v. Plessy decision was separate and equal. The only thing that blacks have is the right to be equal, but separate. And everybody knew that separate would never be equal. And so, once again, the Supreme Court chimed in, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we keep going to the Supreme Court. I mean, you know, the laws that get enacted and all that. But then you're supposed to have someone to interpret the laws justly and all that. And what do they come up with? Dred Scott, they come up with Plessy v. Ferguson. And you say, well, they came up with Brown versus Board of Education. That was almost 100 years after the Civil War. And now separate but equal is no longer the law, but you can. It's like the white Southerner said. Well, let the Supreme Court enforce that law.
And not only that, but you look around and you say, okay, so they passed the law, no more separate but equal. But you look across this home of the brave and land of the free, and you look at the school districts. You look at how the school districts are funded. You look at how the education is distributed, how the books are distributed, all of that. And okay, you don't want to call it separate but equal. Well, it ain't equal.
Not equal. And then you have like things that happen. There's almost like a bubbling of trying to make things right. You know, civil rights, Martin Luther King, and the civil rights movement and all that started to make some of that freedom kind of bubble to the top. And as soon as it bubbles to the top, you know, we get the laws on the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act that allowed us some freedom in certain areas. And what's the Supreme Court do here recently? They gut that law.
They gutted it. They gutted it.
This is the Supreme Court we rely on to for equality and justice and all that. So they gut it because they say that it's no longer needed to have the Justice Department looking over the shoulder of these states when it comes to voting rights and all that. So we do away with that. So what happened when the state said that's gone? Here come all these laws they're enacting to keep people from being able to vote, and we know that it's mostly directed at us. They know to get some of the white people too, but mostly directed at us. And the Supreme Court saying, well, that's okay. Yeah.
But it's not okay. And hence why we have to get some legislation. We have to get some federal legislation passed.
But
whatever it takes, it has to get passed.
We can't seem to get it done and all that. And you know why we keep dealing with this all the time in America is because from the beginning, America endorsed slavery. They enhanced slavery. There's only thing I can say about that is rotten. That's rotten to the core because it's been there since the beginning. And no matter how you dress it up, no matter how you throw some paint on it and all that kind of stuff, put some curtains up on it and all that, and plant your little gardens around it and all that kind of thing, it's still rotten to the core.
It's like what they say, You can put some lipstick on a pig, it's still a daggone pig.
Still a pig. It's rotten. America's rotten to the core. And the only way they're gonna get out of that is to address the issue. It's not to ignore it. It's not to say it didn't happen and all that. And you know, we've been talking about black people, but if you look through the history, see what they did to the Indians? Still doing to the Indians? And somehow we are the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Look what they did to the Japanese and the Chinese. I mean, it's like it. I think that black people got it bad.
Oh, yeah.
The Native Americans got it even worse. To have somebody come in and steal your whole land from you and then subjugate you and try to kill you off, that's worse. But they did it to the Chinese. They did it to the Japanese. They do it to Hispanic Americans today. It's an ongoing terrible American tradition.
It is, and it's rotten to the core, and it's influenced, and it's the result of evilness and wickedness and all that. And people sit back and act like they can't see, can't hear. They need some education on the spirit world and those angels and those demons out there. And maybe we can get our better angels, you know, for this country. But for the next few weeks, we're going to be focusing our Christian education study on the spirit world. You know, those things you can't see, those things you can't touch, but they're all around you. And we're gonna teach you how to worship God in spirit and in truth. Why? Because that's the only way we can get through all this. We want to narrow that gap. And this is going to be a great study. I've taught it before, and every time I do it, it opens certain eyes to certain things that I had not even thought about before. But in the times we're going through right now, we need it. We need to understand it. And we're going to delve into it, and we're going to get on it this Saturday at 11 o'clock in our Standing in the Gap Christian Ministry.
I want to say also, you know, one of the things that I know people will learn from this study is how to recognize those spirits, how to recognize your angels and
your demons.
And your demons. How to try to keep those demons out of your house.
Those demons that this world is saying is okay and saturating you with, affecting your life, infecting your health, infecting your finances, and all that. It needs to be taught. People need to hear it. And we're going to get into it. We're going to get into it deep. Deep. We'll see you this Saturday. Standing in the Gap. Spirit world, angels, and demons.
11 o'clock Eastern Time.
Standing in the gap, standing for Jesus. Standing in the gap for family and friends. Standing in the gap, one love for all, so we all can make it in. Standing in the gap, standing for Jesus. Standing in the gap for family and friends. Standing in the gap, one love for all, so we all can make it in. Studying to show ourselves approved, rightly dividing the word of truth, increasing our faith to envision our freedom, so we all can glorify our God. Standing in the the gap, standing for Jesus. Standing in the gap for family and friends. Standing in the gap.